Hello. The year 2025 ended with a series of consumer rights breaches in December. In early December, Indigo Airlines cancelled or rescheduled more than 4,000 flights over a span of 5 days. In another incident, in a radically different space, in the securities markets, Avdut Trading Academy was found by SEBI to have misled its students on the portfolio returns that its former students were making. And in a less reported incident, a person went all the way up to the Supreme Court to challenge a wrong credit score assigned to him by CIBIL, which CIBIL refused to rectify despite earlier court orders. In each of these cases, an arm of the state was either asked to or chose to intervene to protect the hapless Indian consumer. But in none of these cases, the affected consumers really got compensation or damages. Not yet. So, this underscores a larger fault line in India consumer protection, and that is the state has appropriated to itself the role of a consumer protector, and in fact has taken away the agency of the consumer to pursue a redress of her choice against the manufacturer or defaulting service provider. A regime that substitutes individual or collective legal action with state intervention leaves the consumer, in fact, voiceless, remediless, and without much choice. In my article for the print this week, I dive into the mechanics of why this happens and how can we empower the consumer to seek redress of her choice against defaulting service providers and manufacturers. Now, the state intervention is often an inferior tool compared to individual and collective legal action by consumers themselves for multiple reasons. First, it ends up vesting the state with way more powers. It ends up concentrating way more powers in the state to infringe upon the freedoms and rights of businesses. Second, the state is vulnerable to capture by the same kinds of businesses. So, consumers who have been affected by large or politically connected businesses may not get any remedy at all because this because the state is vulnerable to capture. The third is that regulatory agencies and state agencies are often hobbled by budget constraints, capacity constraints. They inevitably have to prioritize some enforcement actions over others, and consumers affected by the deprioritized enforcement actions end up being remediless. These are often the consumers who have suffered small losses. And finally, it is unclear if the kind of redress that the state obtains will in fact be used to compensate the affected consumers. So, for example, in the Avdut Trading Academy case, SEBI has impounded more than 500 crores from Avdut Trading Academy, but it is unclear if that money will be used to compensate misled students of Avdut Trading Academy eventually when the case is over. For these reasons, in fact, state intervention is an inferior tool. Now, in countries with strong consumer protection regimes, a powerful tool that is available in the hands of consumers to pursue defaulting manufacturers and service providers is the class action suit. What is a class action suit? A class action suit or a representative suit is essentially one where a class of consumers or minority shareholders or a class of people whose rights have been violated can pursue a remedy through a common legal process. Now, at the risk of a selection bias, class action suits have yielded large settlements for shareholders, for the defrauded shareholders of Enron and Satyam in the United States, for the buyers of Volkswagen's cars who were misled by the emission related disclosures. In fact, even US municipal bodies have obtained large settlements from tobacco manufacturers for the healthcare costs that the municipal bodies ended up paying for tobacco induced diseases. Class actions has many benefits over state intervention. First, the consumer gets to pursue a remedy of her choice, a remedy that will proportionately compensate her for the damages that she has suffered because of the default of the service provider. On the other hand, state intervention is often blunt and disproportionate. Second, the costs of pursuing such remedy are and the effort involved in pursuing such remedy is actually spread across many consumers or the entire class of people and is not the state is not burdened. It's not a fiscal burden on the state's balance sheet or the state's resources to keep pursuing the offending manufacturer and service provider. Third, there is a lot of power in this tool because it incentivizes manufacturers and service providers to directly settle with the consumers and in and control the damage that has been caused by their actions. They also do this to prevent further reputational loss. And finally, unlike state intervention, this tool is not vulnerable to capture. Even if the manufacturer or service provider chooses to settle with a few members of the class, like with a few consumers and so on, generally the law requires such settlements to be disclosed in the public domain, which means that the settlement amount ends up being a benchmark which other consumers can use to also obtain proportionate settlements from the service provider or manufacturer. In India, class action is not unheard of. The law allows consumers and minority shareholders and all and different classes of people to actually pursue these kind of proceedings. But class action hasn't quite been the tool that it is designed and meant to be. Its potential is massively unrealized. There are three reasons why class action has been a largely unrealized tool of recovery in India. First, the usual suspect, right? Which is that the case trajectories in Indian courts and the case durations in Indian courts are largely unpredictable. So, for example, a class action suit in this case brought by the government against Nestle in 2015 just ended up getting dismissed last year in 2024 by the National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission. Um, even in class actions in India that have yielded settlements, the case duration has varied from anywhere between 4 years to 10 years. And this creates a massive disincentive. It discourages people to aggregate themselves and pursue their remedies as a class before Indian courts. And it creates almost zero incentive for the manufacturer or defaulting service provider to really settle with the class because there is a threat of a class action suit. The second reason why class action suits don't quite work out in India has got to do with another usual suspect, which is incentives. Now, consumers are often a disaggregated class. They're often scattered all over. Their demands are not the same. The desires are not the same. The motivations are not the same. To aggregate them, bring them together, and pursue relief on behalf of them requires an organizing force. Often, this organizing force is a non-profit association or a civil society organization, but more often, it is the plaintiff's lawyer, or what the Americans call the plaintiff's lawyer. The plaintiff's lawyer is often caricatured as some sort of a character who is an ambulance chaser, who's always chasing the victims of an accident so that he can aggregate their claims and, sort of extract compensation from the insurance company. But in fact, the plaintiff's lawyer is fully incentivized to organize this disaggregated classes of consumers, bring them together, and pursue relief on them right to the end. Why? Because the plaintiff's lawyer often charges a success fee. That is, his fees are linked to the amount that will be awarded in the settlement. In India, lawyers are prohibited from charging success fees, and that creates no incentive for anybody in the system to pursue remedies on behalf of a class of consumers. Second, litigation funding. Litigation funding, as its name suggests, not only funds the litigation through the case life cycle, but it also provides immediate liquidity to the consumers by buying their claims at a discount and seeing the litigation right through the end. In India, litigation funding is frowned upon. So the two most powerful mechanisms that make class action work in many countries do not exist in India. And finally, in many sectors which are very amenable to class action, such as securities markets, the state monopolizes the power to pursue the offender. So, for example, in the securities markets, the SEBI Act provides that no civil court has jurisdiction over any matter in respect of which SEBI can pursue under the SEBI Act. So, for example, uh, investors who are defrauded by things like insider trading, front running, and so on, are disincentivized to aggregate themselves as a class of investors and pursue the offender because SEBI's overwhelming presence as an enforcement agency creates some sort of a cognitive legitimacy where relief is imaginable only by and through the state. Now, these are some of the reasons why class actions don't quite work out in India. That said, it continues to remain a powerful tool which consumers can use to pursue redress against offending manufacturers and service providers. And if we in India are serious about consumer welfare, we must stop substituting and asking for state intervention. And instead, we must empower the consumers to pursue their own redress by aggregating as a class or otherwise. Thank you.